Since the dawn of PC and console games, game development software has made a huge leap forward, allowing even individuals to make their own titles. A reasonable question arises: can a small studio with a limited budget make big, deep and diverse games? In the last decade, some small development teams made a series of attempts to reach that goal and found out that it's pretty tough to rival their bigger, well-financed competitors. Today there are a few studios that manage to do even this, but most of small teams concluded that to add something they need to subtract something. It was a pretty obvious option to simplify the visual side of their projects, since it's one of the most time and resource consuming part, but not the crucial one, and to redistribute the efforts into more balanced gameplay, non-linear plots or bigger worlds. Today we'll look into UnEpic, one of these visually plain but still good-looking games that is considered fascinating by a big community of players. Especially we'll find out what makes it enchanting, investigate what can give a depth to a budget 2D game, can it feel big, and where the red line between simplified style and ugliness lies. You start as a nerdy guy who went to a restroom on a Dungeons & Dragons party and found himself locked in a medieval castle. In several minutes you meet a dark spirit that tries to possess you but fails, becoming an inactive but a very talkative dweller of your mind. Armed with his spiteful comments, a lighter, and whatever you find on your way, you start exploring one castle room after another. Though you immediately find out that UnEpic is full of irony and makes fun of fantasy and video games cliches, it stands really strong on the classics. It carefully combines different elements of Metroidvania, RPG and dungeon crawler genres. And if played on hard and hard++ difficulties, something like Souls game features. The castle is split into rooms exactly fitting the screen. Most of the rooms are dark and need to be lightened by firing the torches on the walls. The camera is placed for you to see a whole room anytime, if you previously lit it, of course. Since every scene contains something interesting and almost all of them have enemies and labyrinth-like structure, you pretty quickly start to treat these scenes as puzzles. The idea of the game is to suck every room dry, take all the loot, find all the secrets, finish all the quests and sometimes kill all the foes, and then move to the next room, slowly conquering the castle and connecting its parts with the quick gate system. There are numbers of ways to take over each room, so you'll most likely use the wittiest ones. Since the game doesn't become very troublesome even on a hard difficulty, a lot of excitement comes from the player's desire to be witty, and the player's abilities to divide and conquer are really big. You can master 8 different weapon styles and 8 magic schools and learn quite a few weapon skills and spells for each of them. In addition, there are plenty of unique weapons with their special benefits that can strongly affect your gameplay style. Also, you'll collect a handful of so-called pets, which, if effectively used, can resolve some game situations even without your interference. It is always very satisfying to find a new pet. All this variety isn't well balanced. Some spells, skills and items are obviously more useful than others, but I don't think that they should be balanced. UnEpic cultivates chaos in its gameplay. You can meet about anything in this crazy cartoony realm, like gestures that can transform your weapon into a rubber hammer, or a floating brain that will make you spill your potions and even inclined to commit suicide. In this Anarchy, you cannot successfully plan your character's development. Instead, you'll filter out different skills, weapons and spells and stick to those that work. This lack of balance is controlled by enemies' attacks and resistances. You'll face more and more unexpected things to come, and your set of proven abilities won't work for long, forcing you to invent new methods of warfare. Though variety in UnEpic sometimes is achieved with annoying iterations. To obtain knowledge of certain magic, most of the time you'll need to enter a new section of the castle, find a spirit imprisoned in the golden box and finish its task by collecting special items and a big amount of magic powder across the section. Thought-out repetitions can be pleasing in big expensive games and can totally save the small ones with low budgets, but these golden box quests are just too much. Also, if you're playing on hard or hard++ difficulties and must use the first golden box to save, be prepared for some nasty backtracking. But let's follow to the good part. Another thing that feels really big is an item drop system. First of all, most of the best equipment is found across the levels and by accomplishing side quests, and some of it is hidden behind numerous false walls, so you have a good reason to carefully explore the castle. Secondly, you can effectively use almost everything you find. Most of the items are worth taking. To equip yourself with the best stuff, to make potions, to have some scrolls and wands or an alternative armor and weapon set for a rainy day, or to sell all the rest, since you're likely to be short on money most of the time. The potion making in UnEpic is a no-brainer and shouldn't scare those people who usually don't touch item crafting in games. Recipes are easy to remember and the ingredients are easy to get. Most of the potion's effects are the same as spells, but to learn all the spells you need to develop 8 characteristics and to master all the potions only 1, so it's always a pleasure to find some useful ingredients. Also, I'd like to mention the spellcasting system. Each spell requires a special type and number of powder that can be bought but more often can be collected from fallen enemies. It is as much a pleasure of finding these teeny colorful powder piles dropped with a pleasant biff, as of ability to immediately use them against the enemies. But let's move from motley powders to overall visuals. The game is tile-based, but this is not striking because each room is designed like a puzzle and feels different from the others. There are no stacked background or foreground layers, only standing out vertical walls, floors and ceilings and recessed back walls. Animations of humanoids are created using very basic skeletal rigs with no squashing and stretching. Battle animations look goofy and feel like a mockery of modern progress in this area. In the opposite, most of non-humanoid foes are made with a couple or even just one frame that squashes and stretches in a certain way or changes scale. All the wings of flying creatures flap by changing their Y scale to 0, then to -1 and back, which is the most primitive way of animating them. Even the doors open by squashing in the direction of the door hinges. That visual style would never work in a game with serious mood, but in UnEpic it also manages to look attractive. That's because UnEpic's visual artists knew what they were doing. This kind of animation still requires a strong knowledge of the principles. Some moving foes in the game look cool and fresh. The audio also matters. Sound is the strong side of the game and is used as a crutch for the graphics. Even an elementary flipping coin becomes very attractive to pick up when it sounds like this. There are all kinds of sound effects in the game, even the most freakish ones. All of them feel over-exaggerated against real-life sounds and very pleasant to hear. The dialogues are also flawlessly performed by pro actors and perfectly edited by sound engineers.
But how can someone be friend and enemy at the same time?
Well, look at Professor Xavier and Magneto. They're friends because they have lots of things in common, but they're also enemies because their goals are different.
Though that can't be told about the music, which was simplified not as well as graphics. It consists of small bits which sound nice and pertinent, but are too short and repetitive and don't loop well. Another thing that makes the game look nice is the lighting system. Instead of improving individual sprites and animations, developers made a universal lighting system to cover their imperfections. And, combined with overall rife colors, it makes a big deal. Besides that, and giving the game's world a feel of volume, it is a crucial part of the gameplay, cause as we already know, to orient in the rooms of the castle we'll have to light an infinite number of torches on the walls. And, of course, the scale. Nowadays it's hard to find a side-scrolling game with such tiny characters and tiles. I can think only of Super Meat Boy. Every object in the game is very plain and has its few noticeable details, probably too few. I suppose that one of the reasons for the UnEpic scale was to hide this lack of details. Let's remember what we have just concluded about the visual style. Objects have few noticeable details, rich colors and nice shadows with some feel of volume due to the lighting system. So we've got a video game eye candy. That's why all these tiny simple objects are rather pleasing than annoying. You can find out more about eye candies by following the link on the screen or in the description. But we've missed one significant visual element of UnEpic, a complicated interface with a number of sections. Messing with it makes a big part of the game. As I said, a lot of excitement in the game comes from being witty while clearing the rooms. The interface allows you to instantly estimate the degree of your wit. All these multicolored floating numbers and text not only please the eye, but give you a strong grasp of the game. At any moment you can see how effective you are and what can be done in this particular situation. When you get your hands on the interface, you start to feel like a pilot behind an onboard computer. Though character development planning in UnEpic is impossible unless you finished the game before, resource waste planning is needed and encouraged. The UI shows you what abilities are in your possession and how many times you can use them. For example, if you are not a fan of grinding, you will be able to use handy regeneration spell about 50 times since you've learned it. This is not a strong restriction, but if you use it in plain battles, you'll quickly run out of green powder and won't be able to use the spell when it is most needed. The inventory window gives UnEpic one more dimension. Brewing potions require a big variety of ingredients to be found and carried. Also, you'll gather all sorts of things like keys, wands, scrolls, and so on. And at some point you'll find out that your inventory looks like a big mess. Sorting the inventory will not only allow you to know what exactly do you carry and effectively use it, but in some situations it can save your life. There are blood-sucking leeches and bats in the game that stick to the character and damage him over time. To get rid of those, you must open your inventory, find the vermin and squash them. If your inventory is totally unsorted, they can get lost in your items, and in some situations that can get you killed, since they bite pretty badly at hard difficulties. Integrating features like this one in the game takes almost no time, but can give a lot to overall gameplay. Summing up, I can say that UnEpic is an exemplar of a game where the appearance is much simpler than the gameplay, but it still looks pretty. It is a nice game that probably could be better if twice as much work has been done, and the game would bring up some serious problems to discuss, but it would be silly to make claims like that about UnEpic. I think that it would be especially helpful for small game dev teams and solos to play it in order to expand their methodology and find some new ways of creation with limited resources. But I also think that plenty of gamers may not like it, because on the other hand, it can be called a budget version of a good Metroidvania RPG, and a lot of its features were done better in bigger projects. But UnEpic still has a strong unique feel to it that we'll try to formulate in a magic spell of the game. It is concentrate on the whole, look in every corner, stay with the best, examine the output, repeat. Before the end of this video, I would like to mention some of the game's features that can be used by small development teams with tight budgets. At some points I will be stating the obvious, but still. Simplify your graphics wisely. Keep in mind the strengths and weaknesses of your team and the eye candy concept. It is a small amount of big details, rife colors, nice shadows and a noticeable volume. If for some reason you don't feel comfortable with keeping things small and carefully balanced, you can try unbalanced variety option. Of course, you'll still need to balance the game's difficulty and other major things, but that way you can manage creation of spells, skills and weapons more freely. Implement high quality audio. Nowadays it's pretty easy to do. You can find really neat sound packs and music sold very cheap all over the internet. If you're a beginner developer and having troubles with level design, or just want to be sure that player carefully explores your world, it may be a good idea to split it into small parts. It is easier to get your head around a bunch of small levels instead of a big one, and it also gives a player a special kind of excitement. All the torches in the room are lit, check. All the chests are opened, check. All the secrets are found, check. Let's move to the next one. Filling your game with a big number of secrets will stimulate this mindset. Make your UI a big part of the gameplay. After you've built a game's UI, you can add nice little features like mini-games to it in no time. Make the order in player's inventory and quick items shortcuts matter. Think of some pleasing way of annotating things and draw pretty looking thumbnails for the items and abilities or buy ones, so the player could enjoy spending time with the UI. This kind of was in previous statements, but give your player a nice feedback. By showing him some numbers to indicate his wits, telling him what options does he have in possession in current situation, and making the item drop sounds distinctive so the player could tell what he had just obtained without looking at it. Besides learning the good things, we can also notice some things to be avoided in your own projects. First of all, use repetitions with caution, since they can effectively fill your game but can easily spoil it. Try to give them a shape of a good tradition rather than a yelling "I don't know how to fill my game" sign. And the last one, get a rich variety of music that loops correctly, if needed. If you can't afford to order music specially for your game, there are tons of amazing cheap or even free music on the internet. Also, you can try to find talented semi-pro musicians or masterful but not well-known bands and cooperate with them. So, this is it. Thank you for watching. Tell me your thoughts on visually simplified games. Are there any good ones you know? Maybe you're making the one. Let me know. Stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe. There's more game magic to come.